Ready?
The last time
I'm a little
Clara Bennett
nervous.
had seen her
Don't be.
father smile
It's
was in a
just the
hospital
beginning.
room that smelled of antiseptic and fading hope. Even as illness stole his strength, he had apologized for leaving behind unpaid loans that threatened to swallow everything he had spent a lifetime building. After his passing, those debts became more than numbers on paper. They became strangers pounding on the front door, legal notices arriving every week, sleepless nights for her widowed mother, and silent tears from her younger brother who pretended not to worry. At 26, Clara had learned that kindness did not erase hardship. She worked long hours, skipped meals without mentioning it, and quietly carried the weight of a family determined not to fall apart. Every solution she found seemed too small against the mountain growing before them. Then came the offer that changed everything. Marry Adrian Ashford. The contract was simple. Her family's debts would disappear forever. Her mother would keep the family home. Her brother's university education would be fully funded. In return, Clara would become the wife of one of the country's most powerful men. People called Adrian Ashford a visionary. His skyscrapers transformed city skylines. His investments revived forgotten neighborhoods. Business magazines celebrated him as the billionaire who never lost. Yet beyond the polished headlines lived another reputation. Employees described him as polite but unreachable. Rivals called him a machine disguised as a man. Society whispered that he possessed everything except the ability to love. Clara had only seen him once before their wedding, sitting across a polished conference table while lawyers reviewed documents thicker than family photo albums. Adrian had spoken little. His gray eyes remained calm, almost unreadable, revealing nothing except absolute control. When she signed the final page, he simply nodded. "Thank you," he had said quietly. "Not congratulations. Not welcome. Only thank you." Those words stayed with her longer than she expected. Their wedding unfolded beneath crystal chandeliers inside one of the most beautiful historic estates on the East Coast. White roses filled the grand hall with their gentle fragrance, while a string quartet played softly beneath painted ceilings. Hundreds of guests attended, yet Clara had never felt more alone. Every smile aimed toward the cameras looked perfect. Every photograph captured elegance. Only she knew how tightly her fingers trembled beneath the bouquet she carried. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Adrian met her eyes for only a moment before offering his arm with flawless courtesy. His touch was steady but careful, as though he feared holding on too tightly. The applause echoed around them. The marriage had begun. Hours later, their private jet crossed endless stretches of blue ocean before landing on an exclusive island reserved for heads of state, celebrities, and billionaires who valued privacy above luxury. Palm trees swayed beneath a sky painted with shades of gold and crimson. Gentle waves rolled across white sand untouched by crowds. It should have felt like paradise. Instead, Clara felt as though every step carried her deeper into the unknown. The presidential villa overlooked the sea from a cliff surrounded by flowering gardens. Floor to ceiling, windows reflected the sunset while soft music drifted through hidden speakers. Staff welcomed them with warm smiles before quietly disappearing, leaving only silence behind. Silence became louder than conversation. Clara stood beside the balcony doors watching the horizon swallow the sun. She slipped off her shoes, pressing her bare feet against the cool wooden floor to steady herself. Her wedding ring suddenly felt heavier than gold. Behind her, she heard Adrian remove his jacket and place it neatly across the back of a chair. Ice clinked gently as he poured himself a glass of sparkling water instead of wine. "You've had a long day," he said. His deep voice broke the silence without disturbing it. "So have you." A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth before disappearing almost instantly. "You don't have to stand," he said. "Please, sit if you're more comfortable." She obeyed without thinking, folding her hands tightly in her lap. Adrian remained standing near the window, looking toward the ocean rather than directly at her. "I know today asked more of you than most people will ever understand," he said. "Whatever you've imagined about tonight." His words stopped. Only then did he truly look at her. He noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands refused to unclench, the shallow rhythm of her breathing. Most of all, he saw fear. Not hesitation, not uncertainty. Fear. Something changed inside his expression. The cold distance everyone described softened almost imperceptibly. He walked toward her slowly, careful enough that she never felt cornered. When he reached her, he lowered himself until they were nearly at eye level instead of towering above her. "Clara." She looked up. "If you're frightened." She nodded before she could stop herself. "I am." There was no judgment in his face. No disappointment. Only understanding. He reached for her hand, stopping inches away as though even that simple gesture required permission. Their eyes met. His voice became almost a whisper. "Can I continue?" The question stole the air from her lungs. She had prepared herself for demands, for obligation, for cold indifference hidden behind wealth and power. No one had prepared her for kindness. No one had told her the man the world feared would ask instead of assume. Tears unexpectedly gathered in her eyes. She nodded slowly. "Yes." Adrian gently took her hand, not with possession but with care, as though holding something precious that could easily break. The room remained quiet except for the distant sound of waves meeting the shore below. For the first time since signing the contract, the crushing weight inside Clara's chest eased. The fear that had followed her from the wedding altar did not disappear completely. But something stronger quietly took its place. Trust. As moonlight spilled across the ocean outside, Clara found herself wondering if the stories told about Adrian Ashford had missed the most important truth of all. Perhaps the man everyone feared was not hiding cruelty behind his silence. Perhaps he was hiding extraordinary kindness. Morning arrived wrapped in brilliant sunlight, but Clara woke with an uneasy feeling she could not explain. For a few peaceful moments she remembered only Adrian's gentle voice asking permission instead of claiming authority. Then reality returned. She found herself alone. The other side of the suite was perfectly arranged, the bed untouched, as though the night had never happened. Downstairs, breakfast waited on the terrace overlooking the endless ocean. Adrian was already seated in a crisp white shirt, reading financial reports with the same icy composure the world admired. His expression revealed nothing of the tenderness she had witnessed only hours before. As she quietly joined him, he closed the folder and spoke with calm precision. Their marriage, he explained, would succeed only if they followed clear boundaries. Before the public, they would appear deeply devoted. Behind closed doors, they would respect each other's independence. Their honeymoon would continue flawlessly for appearances, but once they returned home, separate bedrooms and separate lives would become the new normal. Every word settled heavily inside Clara's heart. She had expected distance before the wedding, not after discovering the compassionate man hidden beneath his carefully controlled exterior. Fighting the sting in her chest, she asked whether the kindness he had shown her had also been part of the agreement. Adrian's jaw tightened almost invisibly before he answered that kindness cost nothing, but attachment cost everything. His voice remained steady, yet his gray eyes carried a sadness too deep to disguise completely. Clara realized he was not rejecting her. He was protecting himself from something far older than their marriage. Before she could ask another question, his phone vibrated. One glance at the screen drained the remaining color from his face. He ended the call without speaking, slipped the device into his pocket, and stared toward the ocean with an expression that belonged to a man watching ghosts return from the past. Later that afternoon, while Adrian attended an urgent video conference, Clara wandered through the private villa searching for fresh air. A leather notebook resting inside the library caught her attention after a sudden breeze flipped it open. She never intended to invade his privacy, but a single photograph slipped onto the polished floor. It showed a younger Adrian smiling beside a beautiful blonde woman whose face had been violently scratched away with deep cuts from a knife. Across the back, written in dark ink, were 6 chilling words: "Trust destroyed everything. Never again." Clara's pulse raced as footsteps approached the library door, and she quickly looked up, realizing someone else had entered the room before Adrian. The photograph slipped from Clara's trembling fingers just as the library door opened. She turned sharply, expecting Adrian, but instead found an elegant elderly woman standing silently beneath the doorway. Her silver hair was perfectly arranged, her posture graceful, and her calm eyes seemed to notice everything at once. "I'm Evelyn Harper," she said warmly. "I've looked after this family for nearly 30 years." Clara quickly bent to retrieve the photograph, but Evelyn's expression changed the instant she recognized it. Without a word, she gently closed the notebook and rested her hand upon its worn leather cover. "Some memories survive because they deserve to," she whispered. "Others survive because they refuse to die." Before Clara could ask what she meant, Evelyn quietly carried the notebook away, leaving behind questions that settled heavily inside the silent room. That evening, Adrian returned from his meetings long after sunset. The peaceful island had disappeared beneath gathering clouds, and distant thunder rolled across the ocean. Clara watched him from the terrace as he stood alone facing the waves, his shoulders unusually tense. For the first time since their wedding, she ignored the invisible wall between them. She walked beside him and quietly asked who the woman in the damaged photograph had been. Adrian's entire body froze. The color drained from his face before he slowly answered. Her name was Vanessa. Nothing more followed until another flash of lightning illuminated the horizon. Finally, he spoke again, his voice rough with a pain that time had failed to erase. Vanessa had once been his wife, the only person he had trusted completely. While he built the company they dreamed of together, she secretly built another future with his closest friend and business partner. Together they stole confidential projects, emptied investment accounts, and nearly destroyed everything his parents had spent their lives creating. When he confronted them, Vanessa did not apologize. She laughed and told him a man who loved as deeply as he did deserved to be betrayed. Clara felt her heart ache, not because of the story itself, but because she finally understood the loneliness hidden behind Adrian's flawless control. She gently reached for his hand without speaking. To her surprise, he did not pull away. Instead, his fingers closed around hers as though he had forgotten what simple comfort felt like. At that exact moment, Adrian's phone vibrated. A single anonymous message appeared across the screen. It contained no greeting, no signature, only one sentence that made his expression turn to stone. "You were foolish enough to love twice. This time, I'll make sure you lose everything." Adrian stared at the anonymous message until the screen went dark, his grip tightening around the phone with such force that his knuckles turned white. Clara watched every emotion pass across his face before he buried it beneath the familiar mask the world knew so well. Without another word, he deleted the message, but she had already read enough to understand one terrifying truth. Whoever had sent it knew about their marriage, knew about his past, and wanted to reopen wounds that had barely begun to heal. Adrian immediately called the head of his private security team, his voice calm but carrying the unmistakable authority of a man preparing for war. Within minutes, guards quietly appeared around the island villa, discreet enough not to alarm the guests nearby, but impossible to miss once Clara noticed them. Paradise suddenly felt like a carefully guarded prison. The following afternoon, the honeymoon was interrupted by an unexpected invitation to an exclusive charity luncheon hosted at the island's luxury resort. Refusing would attract unnecessary attention, so Adrian and Clara arrived hand in hand beneath endless blue skies while cameras flashed from every direction. At first, everything appeared effortless. Wealthy investors praised Adrian's latest developments, while socialites admired Clara's elegance with practiced smiles that never reached their eyes. Then the atmosphere shifted. A glamorous woman approached with calculated confidence, introducing herself as Cassandra Wolfe, a prominent columnist whose articles shaped public opinion. She smiled sweetly before asking Clara the question everyone secretly wanted answered. "Tell me, Mrs. Ashford, what convinced a billionaire known for avoiding marriage to suddenly fall in love with someone the world had never heard of?" Conversations nearby faded into silence as curious faces turned toward them. Clara recognized the trap instantly. She could have spoken about the contract, the circumstances, or the impossible choices that had brought her here. Instead, she looked at Adrian before answering with quiet certainty. Sometimes people spend years searching for perfection and never find peace. Sometimes peace arrives when you least expect it. Adrian's eyes found hers, and for a brief moment the cold distance between them disappeared. The crowd applauded politely, but Cassandra's smile sharpened. "Beautiful answer," she replied, "although peace rarely survives secrets." Before Clara could respond, Adrian's chief of security hurried across the terrace and discreetly handed him a tablet. Adrian's expression darkened as surveillance images filled the screen. Someone dressed as a resort employee had been secretly photographing Clara's private suite for 2 days, and when security searched the room assigned to the suspect, they found only an empty suitcase and another handwritten message waiting on the bed. The honeymoon ends. The real game begins. Private jet left the island before sunrise under the protection of 2 security aircraft. Yet Clara could not shake the feeling that invisible eyes still followed them through the clouds. Adrian remained unusually silent throughout the flight, studying encrypted reports instead of financial documents. Every few minutes another message appeared on his secure tablet from investigators searching for the mysterious stalker, but each update ended the same way. No identity, no fingerprints, no trace. Whoever had invaded their honeymoon had planned every move with frightening precision. As the Ashford estate finally emerged beyond towering iron gates and acres of ancient oak trees, Clara expected relief. Instead, she felt as though the real danger had only just begun. The mansion was breathtaking, a masterpiece of glass, stone, and timeless architecture overlooking a peaceful lake. Yet beneath its beauty rested layers of security that resembled a private fortress more than a family home. Cameras rotated silently from hidden corners, biometric scanners guarded every entrance, and discreet security officers blended into the landscape. Clara realized this was not luxury built for comfort. It was protection built from fear. Mrs. Evelyn Harper welcomed them warmly, but even her gentle smile carried quiet concern as she noticed Adrian immediately ordering additional surveillance around the estate. Before disappearing into his office, he looked at Clara with unusual seriousness. "If anyone claims to know me before you met me, don't believe them until you ask me first." The warning felt strangely personal, leaving far more questions than answers. Unable to quiet her restless thoughts, Clara wandered through the mansion that evening. Behind an ordinary bookshelf, she accidentally discovered a concealed staircase leading upward into a circular room beneath a glass dome. It was an observatory filled with antique telescopes, handwritten journals, and hundreds of framed letters from children thanking an anonymous donor for paying their school fees, surgeries, and university scholarships. Every letter ended with the same words: "Because someone believed in me." Clara stood speechless as she realized Adrian had secretly changed countless lives without ever allowing his name to appear. The ruthless billionaire admired by the world had quietly become a guardian to strangers while asking for nothing in return. Soft footsteps echoed behind her. Mrs. Harper smiled knowingly before saying, "His parents taught him that true generosity should never ask for applause." After they died, he continued their promise alone. Clara gently touched one of the letters, her heart filling with admiration stronger than she wanted to admit. At that exact moment, an alarm shattered the silence throughout the mansion. Red security lights flashed across the walls as Adrian's voice thundered through the intercom, ordering every entrance sealed immediately. Seconds later, the head of security raced into the observatory, holding a small velvet box that had just been delivered anonymously to the front gate. Inside rested Adrian's old wedding ring, stained with fresh crimson paint and accompanied by a note that simply read, "She has finally come home." The mansion remained under complete lockdown until sunrise, but no intruder was found, no cameras captured a face, and no security sensor showed how the velvet box had reached the front gate. Adrian stood inside the command center studying every recording himself, replaying each frame with relentless focus. Clara watched from the doorway as frustration slowly replaced his usual control. Whoever was behind the messages understood his security systems almost as well as his own employees. That realization was more dangerous than the threats themselves. When the investigation reached a dead end, Adrian quietly locked the crimson-stained ring inside a safe, but Clara noticed his hands tremble for the first time since she had met him. The ring belonged to a life he had buried, yet someone had dug it back into the light with terrifying accuracy. By afternoon, the attack moved beyond the estate. Every major entertainment website carried identical headlines. "Billionaire's new wife hiding a secret." Blurry photographs showed Clara entering a private clinic weeks before the wedding. Anonymous sources claimed she had accepted millions in exchange for marrying Adrian. Television commentators questioned her character, while social media erupted with cruel accusations. Clara stared at the screen in disbelief because she had never visited the building shown in the photographs. The images were expertly manipulated, believable enough to poison public opinion before the truth could catch up. Adrian immediately ordered his legal team to begin emergency action, but the damage spread faster than lawyers could respond. By evening, investors had begun calling his board, demanding explanations. Instead of retreating, Clara surprised everyone. She walked into Adrian's office, switched off the television, and calmly looked him in the eyes. "If I hide now, they'll believe every lie." Adrian immediately refused. He insisted the media would destroy her long before they reached him. Clara stepped closer, her voice steady despite the storm surrounding them. "You spent years protecting buildings, companies, and strangers. Let me protect your heart the way you've protected my family." The words silenced the room. Even Adrian's attorney stopped speaking. For several seconds he simply stared at her, seeing not the woman who had signed a contract, but someone choosing to stand beside him when walking away would have been easier. That evening they attended a charity gala exactly as planned. Cameras flashed without mercy while reporters shouted accusations across the red carpet. Adrian instinctively reached for Clara's hand. This time she squeezed his fingers first. Together they walked through the chaos without slowing. Across the crowded ballroom, a woman in an elegant white gown slowly removed her sunglasses and smiled directly at Adrian. His face lost every trace of color. Clara followed his gaze and realized she was looking at the woman from the slashed photograph. Vanessa had not returned to reclaim his fortune. She had returned because she had never stopped playing the game she believed she had already won. The ballroom seemed to fall silent the instant Vanessa Ashford stepped beneath the crystal chandeliers. Conversations faded into uneasy whispers as influential guests recognized the woman whose disappearance had become one of the country's most talked-about scandals years earlier. She wore confidence like expensive jewelry, every step measured, every smile carefully sharpened. Clara felt Adrian's hand tighten around hers, not with affection but with instinct, as though his body remembered a danger his mind had spent years trying to forget. Without taking his eyes off Vanessa, he quietly whispered, "Stay beside me. Whatever happens, don't let her separate us." Vanessa approached with flawless elegance, stopping only a few feet away. "Congratulations," she said sweetly, her gaze lingering on Clara before settling on Adrian. "You certainly recover faster than I expected." Adrian's expression remained cold. "You're trespassing into a life that no longer belongs to you." Instead of reacting, Vanessa laughed softly, the sound carrying across the silent ballroom. "Does she know everything?" she asked, nodding toward Clara. "Or have you conveniently forgotten to tell your new wife what really happened before I left?" The question struck like lightning. Every nearby guest leaned closer, hungry for scandal. Clara looked toward Adrian, searching his face, but before he could answer, Vanessa produced a sealed envelope from her designer handbag and placed it calmly into Clara's hands. "I think every wife deserves honesty," Vanessa whispered before walking away without another word. Adrian immediately reached for the envelope, but Clara stepped back. For the first time since their marriage, uncertainty flashed between them. Inside the envelope was a single photograph and one handwritten page. The photograph showed Adrian embracing Vanessa years earlier inside the observatory at the mansion, both smiling with genuine happiness. The letter beneath it was even more disturbing. It claimed Adrian had hidden the real reason their marriage ended because exposing the truth would destroy his empire forever. At the bottom was one final sentence written in bold ink. "Ask him about Project Horizon." Before Clara could speak, the ballroom lights suddenly went dark. Gasps echoed through the crowd as the enormous projection screens above the stage flickered to life without warning. Instead of the charity presentation, confidential Ashford Corporation documents appeared before hundreds of guests. Financial records, private contracts, and photographs flashed across the screens one after another while shocked voices filled the room. Someone had hacked the event. Adrian's security team rushed toward the control booth, but the final image froze every person in place. It showed Adrian standing beside a man with his arm around Vanessa. Clara instantly recognized him from the stories Adrian had shared. It was the business partner who had betrayed him. Across the bottom of the screen appeared 5 chilling words. One liar. One truth. Choose wisely. Ballroom dissolved into chaos as reporters abandoned their tables and rushed toward Adrian, cameras flashing like relentless lightning. Security officers fought to shut down the giant screens, but the damage had already spread. Within minutes, guests were posting videos across every social media platform, transforming a private charity gala into the nation's biggest breaking story. Clara stood frozen, the envelope still clutched in her hand, while whispers circled the room like hungry predators. Adrian looked directly at her, his voice calm despite the storm around them. Do not believe what you just saw until you hear everything from me. There was no panic in his eyes, only desperation that she would trust him one more time. Without hesitation, Clara slipped her hand into his. That single gesture silenced every doubt growing inside her heart. Whatever truth remained hidden, she refused to let strangers define it first. Back at the Ashford estate, Adrian unlocked a steel vault concealed behind the library fireplace, revealing shelves filled with old files, encrypted drives, and sealed evidence boxes untouched for years. He placed one weathered folder onto the table and slowly opened it. Inside were police reports, forensic audits, confidential emails, and signed witness statements. Project Horizon had never been a real estate development. It had been Adrian's parents' dream to build affordable housing across struggling communities, a project funded by nearly half the family's fortune. Vanessa and Adrian's business partner secretly redirected the investment money into offshore companies while forging Adrian's digital authorization. Before investigators could expose the theft, the partner disappeared overseas, and Vanessa publicly claimed Adrian had personally canceled the project after investors lost millions. To protect thousands of innocent homeowners whose properties would have collapsed overnight, Adrian accepted public blame instead of revealing financial details that would have triggered national panic. He sacrificed his own reputation to prevent ordinary families from losing everything. Clara listened in stunned silence as every missing piece finally connected. The cold billionaire admired for his ruthless decisions had quietly carried another person's crime for years, because exposing the complete truth would have destroyed innocent lives. Before either of them could speak again, the head of security burst into the room carrying a laptop. Government investigators had just frozen multiple offshore accounts linked to Vanessa after tracing suspicious transactions from the gala cyberattack. But one discovery overshadowed everything else. The stolen money from Project Horizon had not disappeared. It had been secretly moved into a dormant trust scheduled to unlock automatically in 48 hours. The beneficiary listed on the account was neither Vanessa nor Adrian. It belonged to someone identified only by 2 words that made Adrian's face drain of color: Clara Bennett. The command center fell into stunned silence as Clara's name remained illuminated on the laptop screen. Even Adrian's cybersecurity director looked confused. There has to be a mistake, one investigator whispered, but Adrian was already studying the encrypted trust documents with intense concentration. The account had been created almost 12 years earlier, long before he had ever met Clara. Hidden beneath multiple shell companies was a handwritten authorization bearing a familiar signature: Adrian's late father. Clara's heartbeat quickened. None of it made sense. Her family had lived modestly for as long as she could remember. Her father had never spoken about billionaires, secret trusts, or multinational investments. Yet the evidence could not be ignored. Someone had connected the Ashford and Bennett families years before fate brought Adrian and Clara together. Determined to uncover the truth before anyone else could manipulate it, Adrian and Clara traveled that night to Clara's childhood home. Her mother, Margaret Bennett, opened the door with visible surprise, but the moment Adrian placed the old trust documents on the dining table, every trace of color disappeared from her face. Tears slowly filled her eyes as she reached for a faded wooden box hidden inside the hallway cabinet. "Your father made me promise never to open this unless everything else failed," she whispered. Inside rested dozens of letters tied together with a blue ribbon, along with an old newspaper clipping showing 2 young businessmen standing beside the foundation stone of an unfinished housing project. One of them was Adrian's father. The other was Clara's father. Margaret finally revealed the truth she had guarded for over a decade. Years before Clara was born, both men had dreamed of building affordable neighborhoods for struggling families. When financial criminals targeted the project, Clara's father secretly accepted legal responsibility for several risky transactions to protect the Ashford family from complete financial collapse. The stress destroyed his own business and eventually buried the Bennett family beneath overwhelming debt, yet he refused every offer of repayment. Ashford's father never forgot that sacrifice. Before his death, he created the hidden trust in Clara's name, instructing Adrian to honor the debt only if destiny ever crossed their paths. Adrian lowered his head, realizing their marriage had never been a coincidence. His father had quietly recognized Clara's name the moment the debt collectors approached her family. Before the emotional revelation could settle, every security phone inside the house began ringing simultaneously. Adrian answered first. His chief of security spoke only one sentence before the line abruptly went dead. "Sir, Vanessa has disappeared from government surveillance, and she has taken someone with her." Seconds later, Clara's phone vibrated with an unknown message containing a single photograph. Her younger brother sat blindfolded inside a moving vehicle. Beneath the image were 6 chilling words: "Bring the trust or lose him forever." The abandoned shipyard stood beneath a sky heavy with rain, its rusted warehouses swallowed by darkness and silence. Adrian's security team surrounded the area from a distance, but he ordered them to hold their positions. Vanessa had made one thing painfully clear. If she saw armed men approaching, Clara's younger brother would disappear forever. Carrying the encrypted trust drive inside his jacket, Adrian walked beside Clara toward the warehouse where a single light glowed through a broken window. Every step echoed across the wet concrete, every heartbeat louder than the crashing waves nearby. When the massive steel door creaked open, Vanessa stood waiting with a satisfied smile while Clara's brother sat tied to a chair behind her, frightened but unharmed. "You finally came," Vanessa said calmly. "Hand me the trust and everyone walks away." Adrian stepped forward without hesitation, but Clara gently stopped him. Looking directly into Vanessa's eyes, she quietly asked one question. "If money was all you wanted, why spend years destroying lives?" For the first time, Vanessa's perfect mask cracked. Her smile disappeared, replaced by bitterness that had poisoned her heart for years. She admitted she had never accepted losing Adrian because she could not bear the thought of him finding happiness without her. Every lie, every forged document, every attack had been designed to leave him as lonely as she had become. She wanted victory, not wealth. While Vanessa confessed, Adrian's cybersecurity team completed the final trace on the trust account. They discovered a hidden condition written by Adrian's late father. The trust could never be transferred to anyone through threats, fraud, or violence. Any criminal attempt would immediately release every confidential financial record to federal investigators. The moment Vanessa forced Adrian to unlock the account, the security protocol activated automatically. Police vehicles surrounded the shipyard as sirens echoed through the night. Realizing she had trapped herself instead of Adrian, Vanessa tried to flee, but officers intercepted her before she reached the exit. Her empire of lies collapsed in minutes as investigators arrested the remaining members of her criminal network waiting outside. Clara rushed to untie her younger brother, embracing him through grateful tears while Adrian quietly watched, relief softening the guarded expression he had worn for so many years. As dawn painted the horizon with gentle gold, the nightmare that had haunted his life finally came to an end. Months later, the hidden trust funded the affordable housing project both fathers had once dreamed of building together. Thousands of families received homes, proving that kindness planted years earlier could still change lives. Adrian no longer hid behind silence, and Clara no longer feared tomorrow. Their marriage had begun as an agreement between strangers, but every storm they survived transformed it into something no contract could ever create. On their first wedding anniversary, Adrian surprised Clara by taking her back to the same private island where fear had first given way to hope. Standing on the quiet beach beneath the evening sky, he gently took both of her hands, smiled with the warmth she had once believed impossible, and asked the same question that had changed both their lives forever. "Can I continue?" Clara laughed through happy tears before answering, "For the rest of our lives." He kissed her forehead as the waves rolled gently onto the shore, not as a billionaire protecting an agreement, but as a husband who had finally learned that love was never his greatest weakness. It had always been his greatest strength. Together they returned home, where laughter filled the mansion that had once echoed with loneliness, and where future children would grow surrounded not by fear or secrets, but by trust, compassion, and unwavering love. The contract had ended long ago, yet the promise made with one whispered question would remain unbroken for the rest of their lives.